When I was broke, I didn't just learn how to make money. I had to learn how to manage myself. I had to practice discipline when there was barely enough. I had to say no to things I couldn't afford, even when my emotions wanted to say yes. And let me tell you, it's easier to say no when your options are limited. But if you don't develop the strength when you're small, you'll be overwhelmed when you're big, because wealth multiplies everything. Your thoughts, your choices, your impact. That's why the first fortune you build isn't in your bank, it's in your mind, your heart, your daily decisions. I had to become the kind of person who could be trusted with abundance. That meant becoming consistent, not impulsive. Becoming generous, not wasteful. Becoming focused, not distracted. Because when the money comes, and it will, if you do the work, you want it to land in the hands of someone prepared. Someone who doesn't just own the wealth, but knows how to grow it, protect it, and steward it. So the goal isn't just to get rich. The goal is to become rich in discipline, rich in wisdom, rich in habits. Because if you get those right when you have little, they will serve you well when you have much. And if you ignore them now, money will only make the cracks in your foundation wider. So build the character first. The wealth will follow. I remember a time when I had just enough money in my pocket to get by. Not a fortune, just enough to pay the rent, grab a decent meal, and keep the lights on. But I also remember something even more important. I had dreams, big ones, and I knew if I didn't make sacrifices early, those dreams would slip into the land of someday, which often turns into never. You see, the secret isn't just to live rich later, it's to choose discipline now, even when comfort whispers in your ear. Because comfort today, if not earned, becomes the price tag on your future freedom. Most people spend everything they earn because it feels good in the moment. A new gadget, a fancy dinner, another pair of shoes, it all seems harmless until you realize your money was buying moments, not freedom. I learned early on that if you can delay the craving for luxury now, you buy yourself something more valuable than stuff you buy time, control, choices. And here's the magic of it. Those who learn to live poor by choice, not by circumstance, end up wealthier than those who chased comfort every chance they got. It's not about living in misery, it's about living intentionally. When I was earning very little, I still paid myself first. I cut cable before I cut my savings. I skipped vacations, not because I didn't want them, but because I was building something permanent. I wasn't buying a weekend off, I was buying decades of peace. Now, when the returns started coming in, when investments grew, businesses expanded, income multiplied, I wasn't surprised. I had built the foundation, and I didn't feel guilt spending later because I had already earned the right. That's the difference. Most people want the harvest before the planting, but life doesn't work that way. If you don't plant in the spring, you beg in the fall. You either suffer a little discipline now or a lot of regret later. The choice is always yours. I used to think problems were something to avoid. I'd dodge them, delay them, deny them. But life has a funny way of sending the same lesson over and over until you finally sit down and listen. And when I finally did, I discovered one of the greatest truths about wealth and success. Every problem contains within it a seed of potential profit, but only if you're willing to stop, examine it, and extract the lesson. When I was younger, I made a bad investment, jumped in too fast, trusted the wrong people, didn't do my homework, lost almost everything I'd saved that year. It would have been easy to complain, to blame, to throw up my hands and say, well, that's the game. But I didn't. I grabbed a notebook and wrote down everything I did wrong. I replayed it in my mind, not as a victim, but as a student. I wrote down what I missed, what I assumed, what I ignored, and then I wrote down what I would do differently next time. That one painful mistake ended up teaching me more than any winning trade ever did. See, the wealthy don't avoid failure, they use it. They don't fear the fall because they've trained themselves to land, learn, and leap again. They journal their mistakes. They document their losses. They treat every setback like a seminar they paid for, and the tuition might be expensive, but the return is lifelong wisdom. I started treating every financial misstep like a classroom, and that shift changed everything. Now, When something goes wrong, I don't panic. I ask, what's the lesson here? What did I overlook? Where was my thinking flawed? I don't move on until I've extracted the profit buried in the problem. And often the insight I gain saves me 10 times more down the road. That's how wealth is built, not just through good times, but by learning how to navigate the bad ones smarter than before. So don't fear your mistakes. Don't bury your failures. Record them, reflect on them, study them, then go out and earn the return on your pain. Because the difference between those who stay stuck and those who rise lies in what they do when things go wrong. I remember a time when I thought I needed a new car. The paint on my old one was fading, the engine made a little noise, and it certainly didn't turn heads when I drove down the street. But did I need a new one? Number, I wanted it. And I was close, so close, to signing that loan and locking myself into another monthly bill. But I paused and I asked myself the question that changed my financial trajectory. Is this a need or just a well-dressed want? You see, broke people blur the line. They say, I need this vacation, or I need this phone, or I need to upgrade. But the truth is, most of the things we claim we need are comforts in disguise. Now, there's nothing wrong with comfort, but if comfort comes at the cost of your future, it becomes a thief. It robs you quietly in monthly installments while you convince yourself you deserve it. The wealthy don't fall for that. They learn to separate. They know a need is about survival, about momentum, about the essentials that allow you to function, grow, and build. A want? That's icing. That's the luxury that belongs on top of a cake, not instead of one. I started asking myself before every purchase, will this take me closer to freedom or farther from it? And if the answer wasn't crystal clear, I waited, I saved. I held back, not because I was cheap, but because I was focused. It's like building a house. If you spend all your bricks on decoration, you never get walls. Spend them on structure first, and the decorations will come and stay. Most people try to live like the wealthy before they become the wealthy. But here's the truth. Discipline now builds abundance later. The person who can delay a want today is the one who can buy that same want 10 times over tomorrow without blinking, without borrowing, and without guilt. So train yourself. When the impulse hits pause, ask the question, delay the gratification. Because every dollar you protect today is a seed that grows into your tomorrow. That's not sacrifice. That's strategy. And that's how real wealth begins. When I was young, I used to chase money. I chased it like it was running away from me. I'd take any job, any opportunity, as long as there was a paycheck at the end. And sure, the checks came, but so did the exhaustion, the frustration, and the feeling that I was running in place. No matter how hard I worked, there never seemed to be enough. That's when I learned a powerful lesson. Money isn't something you chase, it's something you attract by becoming more valuable. When I shifted my focus from income to value, everything changed. I started teaching, not just working. I started sharing ideas, not just logging hours. And sure enough, the money came. But more importantly, the fulfillment came. You see, income is short-term. Value is legacy. Income stops when you stop. But value compounds. Value spreads. Value builds reputation, relationships, and eventually wealth that sticks. It's the difference between being paid to dig a hole and being paid to build a bridge. One gets you a paycheck, the other gets you a future. If you want to increase your income, increase your impact. If you want to earn more, learn more, serve more, build more. And don't just look at how much you're being paid, look at how much you're becoming. So here's what I tell young people all the time. Stop asking, how can I make more money? And start asking, how can I become more valuable? Because when you get that right, money becomes the easy part. It's not about chasing, it's about becoming. And when you become the kind of person who creates real value, the money won't just knock, it'll break down the door to find you. When I was in my 20s, I worked hard, sun up to sundown, 6 days a week. I thought if I just outworked everybody, I'd outrun poverty. But I learned the hard way that hard work alone won't make you wealthy. See, there are people who dig ditches all day and barely survive, while others sit in boardrooms for 2 hours and walk away with fortunes. The difference isn't in the sweat, it's in the strategy. It's not just about earning, it's about learning. Let me tell you what changed my life. I stopped working just for a living and I started working on myself. I picked up books. I listened to tapes. I sought out mentors. I turned off the noise and turned on the learning. And what I discovered was that wealth doesn't come from the effort of your hands. It comes from the expansion of your mind. A single idea, properly applied, can be worth more than 10 years of labor. Most people think rich people are lucky or born into it. No, they think differently. They've trained their minds to spot opportunity where others see risk, to understand money instead of fear it, to create instead of consume. I remember reading 10 pages a day, every day, no matter what. That small habit multiplied my thinking. I started learning about compound interest, leverage, cash flow, not because I was trying to impress anyone, but because I was building a new mind. A mind equipped for wealth. And don't tell me you don't have time. You've got commute time, lunch breaks, evenings, turn your car into a classroom, use your downtime to level up your insight. Because every financial decision you make comes from the quality of your thinking. And the quality of your thinking comes from what you feed your mind. So I'll say this, don't just earn your living, learn your way into a fortune. Don't just clock in, check in with wisdom. If you want more out of life, you've got to become more. Because when your mind becomes valuable, your income will catch up. And then, it's no longer a race to earn more, it's a process of becoming more. I remember sitting in a little coffee shop with a man who was living the kind of life I only dreamed about. He wasn't flashy, no expensive watch, no big car, but his words were gold. In 45 minutes, he taught me more about money, discipline, and vision than I'd learned in 4 years. And you know what I did? I listened. I took notes, and then I acted. That conversation alone changed the trajectory of my life. See, broke people guess. They try to figure everything out on their own. But the wealthy, they study, they ask, they sit at the feet of people who've already built what they're trying to build. They understand that a 2-hour conversation can save them 2 years of mistakes. They know that wisdom doesn't always come from experience. It often comes from exposure. So if you want to change your bank account, change your circle. Get around people who stretch your thinking. People who talk about growth, assets, vision, and legacy, not just gossip, trends, and entertainment. Go where the heat island. Sit at tables where the conversation makes you uncomfortable, because that's the sign you're growing. And you don't need 10 people. You need one mentor, one voice of clarity, one relationship that helps you see the world not just as it is, but as it could be. Seek that person. Learn from them. Honor their time. Apply what they say. Because in the end, success doesn't just come from what you know, it comes from who you know, and more importantly, who knows you and believes in your potential. So build your circle wisely, because wealth travels best through relationships. When I first started making money, just little bits of it, I thought the point was to survive. I'd spend the check, meet my needs, and maybe treat myself a little. But then I met someone who said something that changed the way I saw money forever. He said, most people eat their seed. That hit me like a lightning bolt, because I realized I was doing just that. I was treating every dollar like bread for today, never stopping to ask if any of it should be seed for tomorrow. You see, every paycheck contains 2 parts. The part that feeds you now and the part that could feed you for a lifetime. The challenge is that bread is comfortable, it's immediate. Seed, on the other hand, is invisible when planted. You don't see results right away. It doesn't give you pleasure tonight. But if you water it, protect it, and give it time, it will grow into something far bigger than what you could ever consume in a single moment. I started small. 10% of every dollar I earned, I treated it like sacred seed. I didn't touch it. I sent it into investments, books, skills, and opportunities. And I did that long before I had much money. The habit came before the harvest. And years later, I didn't just have more money. I had more freedom, more confidence, and more options. Not because I earned more, but because I respected what I earned. Most people spend what they make, then wonder why they stay stuck. The secret isn't in the size of your income, it's in how much you let grow. You don't need a bigger paycheck. You need a better plan for the one you already have. So the next time money comes in, ask yourself, am I just feeding today's appetite, or am I planting for tomorrow's abundance? One gives you comfort, the other gives you freedom. Make the wiser choice and let your seed grow in silence. Because harvest always follows the habit. When I was broke, I thought money was the missing piece. That once I had some, then I could start building wealth. But I learned quickly it's not money that builds wealth. It's thinking, it's structure, it's preparation. In fact, if you wait for money to start thinking like the wealthy, you'll never have either. You build wealth before you have capital, not after. You see, real wealth starts with leverage. Leverage that doesn't need a bank account. Skills are leverage. Relationships are leverage. Systems and habits are leverage. And the great secret? You can build all of those when you're still broke. I began my journey with a cheap notebook and a determination to learn. I didn't have assets, but I had time. I used that time to read, to observe, to practice skills that one day would become extremely valuable. Communication, persuasion, service, leadership, these don't cost anything but effort, and they can change your whole future. Let me tell you, before I made my first real dollar, I was already valuable because I had prepared, I had leverage, I had habits that allowed me to scale up fast once opportunity knocked, and it will knock. But it only knocks loud for those who are ready. So don't sit around waiting for your big break or some magical inheritance. Build your inner capital. Write a daily plan. Study people who've built fortunes. Learn how systems work. Learn how sales work. Learn how value works. Because value will open doors, money can't. And when money does come, you'll know exactly what to do with it. Most people think they need a windfall to start building number. You need intention. You need strategy. You need the character that wealth requires long before the dollars arrive. So treat today like your training ground. Build your value before you have valuables. Because when you've got leverage, capital is just the icing. When I first began teaching people about wealth, they'd come to me with big goals. I want to be a millionaire. I want financial freedom. And I'd nod and smile, but then I'd ask, what standards have you set? And that's when the room would go quiet. Because you see, goals are what we want to happen. Standards are what we refuse to live without. There's a big difference. The wealthy don't just dream about saving, investing, or building. They do it. Not when it's convenient, not when motivation hits, not when the stars align. They do it because it's the standard. And when something becomes your standard, it moves from the world of wishes into the realm of reality. A standard is a line in the sand. It says, this is who I am now, and this is how I operate. No exceptions. When I was young and broke, I set goals just like everyone else. But my life didn't change until I raised my standards. I told myself, I save a portion of every check. I invest monthly. I read daily. I don't go into consumer debt. Period. These weren't hopes anymore. They became rules I lived by. And when you have rules that align with your vision, you begin to behave like someone who already has the results. That's the trick. Act like the person who's already achieved what you want. Not just in thought, but in behavior. The millionaire doesn't save when it's easy. They save because it's a standard. They don't invest when the market feels safe. They invest because they've trained themselves to think long term. So don't just write down what you want. Write down what you will do no matter what. That's how wealth is built, not in the inspiration, but in the discipline. Raise your standards and your results will rise to meet them. When people come to me saying, I just can't seem to get ahead, I don't ask them for their story. I ask them for their numbers, because numbers don't lie. Stories do. Stories are full of emotion, justification, and excuses. Numbers just sit there, quiet, cold, but full of truth. See, every excuse has a way of sounding good when you say it out loud. The cost of living is too high. I don't earn enough. I'm just bad with money. But when you put pen to paper, track every dollar in and every dollar out, what you find is clarity. And clarity destroys excuses. I remember coaching a young man who insisted he couldn't save a penny. He worked hard, he said, but there was nothing left at the end of the month. I asked him to track every purchase for 30 days, every snack, subscription, delivery, and daily coffee. He came back shocked. Hundreds of dollars, not spent maliciously, but unconsciously. And that's the danger. Most people don't fail financially because of one bad decision. They fail because of hundreds of unnoticed ones. Not tracked, not measured, and certainly not improved.